I'm breaking free from the dark.
Michael Jackson performed professionally from the age of 5. By 11, he was one of the most famous people on the planet. He would remain one of the most famous people on the planet continuously for the next 40 years without a single extended period of genuine obscurity ever for his entire life. In the last video, we discussed obscurity as potentially the single most important factor separating prodigies who sustain long careers from those who burn out. JAKSON never got it. Not once. Combine that with the framework from this entire series, the flood, the filter, the wall, and a specific evidence-based picture emerges of what may have actually been happening, neurologically and psychologically, behind one of the most scrutinized and misunderstood lives in modern history. JAKSON's creative output as a performer, choreographer, and producer shows clear markers of the raw material we've described throughout this series. Extraordinarily wide associative thinking across genres, combining rhythm and blues, rock, funk, and pop in ways that were genuinely novel at the time. Unusually intense effective processing. Multiple collaborators have described his ability to access and convey extreme emotional states, repeatedly, on demand, in performance and recording. And a degree of perfectionism in the studio that by numerous accounts bordered on obsessive hundreds of takes for single vocal lines. Years spent on individual albums. Every piece of the raw material appears present at a high level. Which means the question this video is asking isn't whether he was talented. That's not in dispute. The question is, given everything we know about what determines outcomes for this raw material, was there ever a wall? Here's what we know about his childhood, which is extensively documented. An unusually harsh, performance-focused upbringing from his father, beginning before age 6 rehearsals, physical discipline tied to performance quality, and almost immediate professional touring. Using the framework we've built, early environmental structure as a dial that determines outcomes for a low-filter brain. This was structure, in the sense of being rigid and externally imposed. Similar to what we discussed regarding Beethoven's early training. But there's a critical difference. Beethoven's harsh early structure was eventually separated from public evaluation. He had periods, especially in young adulthood, of developing his craft with reduced public scrutiny. JAKSON's structure and his public evaluation were the same thing from nearly the beginning. The discipline was the performance. There was no private space where the skill existed separately from being watched, judged, and as the prodigy research describes, having his sense of self increasingly fused with audience response. From an age when most children haven't yet developed a stable sense of self at all. This connects to something specific about JAKSON that's been widely discussed but rarely framed this way. His lifelong, well-documented attempts to construct elements of a childhood Neverland Ranch. Relationships with children. An adult life surrounded by the toys, animals, and amusement park features of a childhood he didn't get to have privately. Through the lens of this series, this isn't simply eccentric. It may represent an adult attempting, decades later, to build the one thing the prodigy research identifies as critical, and that he never had at any point. An unevaluated space. The tragedy from this framework is that by the time JAKSON was attempting to build this space as one of the most famous and scrutinized humans alive, true obscurity was no longer possible for him in any form. Every attempt to create a private, unevaluated space became, almost immediately, a public spectacle, the opposite of what the space was meant to be. The wall could not be built. Not because he didn't understand he needed one, but because the condition required for a wall, something existing outside public evaluation, had been impossible for him since early childhood, and remained impossible for the rest of his life. This reframes the entire trajectory. The extraordinary creative output genuinely, by any measure, among the most significant of the era, and the increasingly publicized personal struggles aren't two separate stories. One the genius, and one the tragedy. Using this series framework, they're the same story. An extreme version of the raw material, present from early childhood, that never had access to the one missing piece, the wall, because the specific conditions required for a wall were structurally impossible for someone whose fame began before their personality had finished forming, and never ended. Every other case in this series involves someone who, at minimum, had the opportunity to build a wall even if they didn't take it, or lost it later. JAKSON's case may be the starkest example in this series of the raw material existing at the highest level, for the longest sustained period, with the least access to the one factor that, in every other case, determined the outcome. If fame itself can remove the one variable that determines whether extraordinary talent leads to a stable life, what does that mean for a world where more people than ever are growing up with some degree of public visibility from a very young age? In the next video, we look at this exact question, but from the other side. People who deliberately create the conditions described in this video. In other people. On purpose. Subscribe so you don't miss it.